All right, hello everyone. It's 10 a.m. So we're going to do it today. We're going to talk about the pre-shot routine. I should say I'm going to talk about the pre-shot routine. Any comments they get made while I'm on the stream, we're going to address. So if you have questions about what I'm talking about, or if you want to even expound upon them, if you can, on your comment, then I'm all ears. I think that this is I think it's a pretty simple concept to understand the pre-shot routine, which is basically, if you think about all the things that lead up to striking the ball and afterward, is basically a series of events. And we're basically with the pre-shot routine, you're just trying to describe what's happening, not just like immediately up to and then not after that, but after the shot. But it's like all the things that you're doing in the process of shooting is all a cycle. You're going to repeat shooting over and over and over again, and then I think that we're having a quest for consistency and precision, and in that quest, we need to then at some point decide, okay, what are we doing actually to make the ball go where we want and do what we want, and what's the process. So depending on your level and what kind of person you are, you're going to kind of have, it's going to be different. I think that it's a good idea to have a framework, but then at the same point, you don't want to over add details to the routine, because it becomes a more complicated mechanism when you do that. However, with that being said, if you're that kind of person to where you do want to add these details to the actual routine, then you can. I would say that for myself, what I kind of have done is I have like subset routines within the main routine of the pre-shot routine, so that when I want to work on part of it, then I'm just going to work on a small part of it, which I've already got more detailed, and that then is incorporated into a larger, like more generic uh, framework, so that then I can be adaptable and not be like so rigid as far as my way that I'm doing things, because I know that it's a lot of things are happening in flow, and that oh, you know, you're constantly looking for improvements. So because of that, you can't be so rigid with like thinking this is the end all be all of any of it. You have to realize that over the course of time that you play pool, that your pre-shot routine is going to evolve, and that evolution needs to be built into the actual process and device of the mechanism that you're employing. There has to be a phase of like reflection. There has to be a phase of data acquisition. There has to be all these things that are going to help you improve over time and evolve your pre-shot routine so that it can be flexible enough to allow you to evolve. If you just say, this is what I'm going to do forever, and you memorize it, and your whatever your Fargo is, and now you don't work on that, you don't try to improve on it, it is not necessarily going to make you not get better. But then at the same time, if you're not willing to change that element of it, then what are you willing to change in order to make changes? It's like you can't get better if you just continue to do the same things. You're practicing doing those things, and that's what you're getting better at, is doing that exact thing. That makes it hard to see how you're not getting better. But really, it's like if you make a change, then you'll see that there's now a difference, and that difference is where the improvement can come from. By subtracting a negative from your game, you'll increase your ability, and by adding positives into your games, you're going to increase your ability. But you cannot increase your ability through the process of not doing any of that. You're adding or subtracting, and that's either going to help you or hurt you. And that the process of that addition and subtraction is where you make little stimulus to your game. And if you do the same thing every time, you're going to get the same result. And if that's not a result that you're pleased with, then you need to make a decision at some point, like, oh, I need to make changes, and I think people are a lot of times searching for direction, and that becomes kind of a tricky thing, because if I explain to someone what my pre-shot routine is, then they can use that as a framework to start, but ultimately, once you have my pre-shot routine memorized as I speak it to you, then now what you're going to have to do is actually take elements of that and change them so that they better meet what your needs are, and that has to do with your own exploration of who you are as a person, how you think. If you thought like me, you'd be me. That's just how it works. So it's like you got to take what my information that I give you and use that as best you can to create your own system that works for you, that allows you to meet your goals with how you go about doing things, which a lot of it's like not just, my goal is not just to make the thing happen, but to enjoy myself, enjoy the process of that. And if I don't work on that, then it doesn't work. It doesn't get better. So back to the pre-shot routine, exactly what I'm doing. So once I've decided what I'm going to do, so if I have say we're here, let's just go to a rotation here. So if we're playing 9-ball, mostly it's obvious what you're supposed to do. There's maybe 2 or 3 shots. You might have to play safe if you don't have a good shot. You might be able to do something tricky. But mostly it's kind of like standard situations. This would be one of them, right? So once I've decided what I'm going to do, so say I have a ball in hand here, just to like play the ghost. I don't want to like have to stretch out too much and do something crazy. But we're not even going to necessarily shoot any shots here. But part of this is like, once I've decided what I'm going to do, you're going to plan your shot. Say I'm going to like roll up here, end up here, and then come to that so that you can shoot the 3 down there and have the shot. Maybe you're playing short side for the 5. So 5 or the 6 is a little bit tricky. But anyways, that's part of the, I don't know if this would be considered part of the pre-shot routine, but I think that as you get better at pool, you realize that these events are just occurring in sequence, and then if you neglect to address each element in the sequence, even if it's just a small amount of time, because sometimes it's obvious, if the 2 is here, and then the 3's here, there's nothing. It doesn't even matter what you decide to do. Hardly. You're gonna get 3 or 4 balls without even using your brain to make conscious choices about like, where do I need the cue ball to be exactly. The problem with being a little bit lazy there is in that it becomes its own habit. So part of like what you got to do is, as you progress, is you got to like habitually do the right thing, even though there's no reason to do it. Like, it doesn't matter what I do here. As long as I make the 1, I'm probably going to make the 2, and I'm also going to make the 3 and the 4 without really doing anything consciously. The problem is that if you rely on that unconscious behavior to get you through half the rack, and then now you're forced to be conscious and now play shape, is that you've habitualized not playing shape, and now you're having to make a change to a new thing. So it's like part of the understanding is that the ritual of doing it and consciously choosing places to play and all that takes away a little bit of the nerves when later on when you do need to plan, because part of the problem that people have is they don't habitualize having a good plan even when it's not necessary to have a good plan. And then when you do need to have a good plan, well, how do you make a good plan? You haven't been practicing. You got to practice it. So partly is once you've selected your shot, which it doesn't matter how long you spend on it, it's just like, if it's easy to see like this, I just come over here, that's perfectly fine, because that leads me to like rolling ball over here, and then I have a huge area to end up with. This is a very high statistical probability that you're going to go from the 2 to the 3 and be able to make the 3 pretty easily with a chance to get shape on the 4. Doesn't need to be thought that much about. Now, if there's a situation where you have like this, and then you're leading to like this is your next shot, now you have to be like, oh, okay, now I got to be over here planning to get perfect so that I can play my next shot, which might have to be like hitting it over to this line here to try to get to this spot, which is not necessarily so simple. It's totally doable, but you need to get to a proper location, and that requires you then to play a specific spot. But if the whole time, every time you hit a ball, you're already always playing to a specific spot, this won't be anything new. The pressure won't matter as much because you're just doing the same things. Part of the pre-shot routine, and what's so amazing about it is that it makes everything more routine and more every day. By having a routine, it's like you wake up in the morning, you make your bed, you drink some water, you go to the bathroom, do some push-ups, drink some coffee, you do all those things. It's like 5 or 6, 7, 10 things in a row that you're doing without even really thinking about it. And then the only time that you're now having to really think and be conscious, because the routine is so solid, is when something new comes up, or the changes that you're trying to, the adaptations you're trying to make. Those are the things that are new, and those are things that you're going to focus on. So by making a plan and then just going with it, it just is a habit. So that's part of like what the purpose of the pre-shot routine is, to understand that everything that happens in pool is just a repeating event. And then the sooner we get to be like, okay, what are the repeating parts of this that are easy for me to be like, okay, I can just use these rules of, generic, like, just standard things that you do that work in these situations. And then now all we're trying to do is identify new situations where I have to like evolve because my thinking that I'm using is not advanced enough, or it's not detailed enough to like overcome this situation as often as I want it to, because you're going to be able to get there without necessarily having the best plan. It's not really about that. It's about execution, so it's like, as long as you plan a shot that you can execute every single time you shoot, now it seems to me as though you're probably going to get there most of the time. Obviously, you're not going to hit every ball the way that you wanted to. That's not how it works. It's part of the inherent inconsistency of your results, just obviously, is because you are inconsistent. The balls and all that stuff are perfectly consistent. So the more consistent you are with your behaviors and the more analysis you give yourself on yourself, then you can make changes that will help you. But you have to like start from some sort of structure. So if I were to just go to continuing with like pre-shot routine after planning the shot, is that okay? Well, in my mind I kind of draw some lines. Like, okay, I want the ball to float over here. I need the object ball to go to the hole. So one of the things that I will do is that I will visualize seeing the ball go, and it doesn't have to be that I have to stand behind it and look straight down and watch it like go in the hole. It may be that visualization. Whatever I have to do to make that happen, I will do, because some shots are harder to visualize. If I'm playing a bank on the 5, this is a pretty simple one, but now if I'm trying to bank the 5 and it's here, that's a little bit tougher to see and just shoot the shot without really having to aim that hard, because it's a little bit more complicated physical things going on as far as like the throw and all that stuff. Is you have to manage it a little bit more, when you start getting thinner hits and all that. Bank shots get a little bit more technical, so you just have to understand that. But like the easier ones they're easier, because the mechanics are simpler, and you've hit more of those because, as you get better, you just start advancing your ability out to the weird stuff. But at the beginning, it's like, it's all weird. You make it less weird by shooting the shot simple, and then you add more difficult shots to your repertoire over time. Okay, so say I'm going to just come over to here. So what I'm going to do is, once I can see myself doing it, then I will shoot the shot. Now, a lot of that has to do is, like I said earlier, it's a sequence of events that's occurring. So once you know the sequence of events of the way that you're going to move your body, then you can just do that motion. So it's like, what I'm going to do is see the ball go in and go here, and that's going to need a certain amount of power. It's going to need the cue ball to go to a certain place, and then when it hits here, it has to have a certain kind of spin on it to make it go to the spot where I want it to go. So once I know that that's the exact shot that I want to shoot, through the plan of making a choice, this is what we're going to do. And now that we've made this choice, it's like, well, how do we execute on the decision, on the choice? And that has to do with, well, you use the system. And the system that I use, like I said, first thing is you got to visualize the shot, because once you see the shot, now you can be like, oh, I need my body to do this action, because I need to create a certain amount of power with my hand, and then use the cue to like put it into the cue ball, and then the way that I address that, because it's a known shot that it needs to happen, exact physics are there. Now, theoretically speaking, I should be able to create from my own body movement an exactly consistent pathway, so to speak, where I do a series of motions with my body that then makes this ball go in, and then the cue ball goes to here. But in order to do that, the way my pre-shot routine tells me is I don't think when I'm down on the ball like this, oh, how hard do I have to hit it and what the line is. I already know, because I've been here, I'm visualizing myself being in this position, already locked in, hitting it exactly the way I want to with the stroke that I'm going to use before I even move, because it's part of the routine of it. Everybody gets to do it the way they want to. If you want to be like, oh, I know that I want to go here, and then, you just come down on the ball, and now you're good here, and then you hit it, and you decide while you're down here, it's like, oh, what is the stroke going to feel like? You can do that. And there are players that do that, and it's, or you can be down on it, double checking, and making sure that everything looks perfect, and get your hand exactly where you want it to be, and make all those decisions while you're down on the ball. Or what I like to do is have everything decided before I even move, so that it's more orchestrated, because then I can just like, okay, if I deviate from the orchestration that I've told myself my pre-shot routine is, that every body motion that I make, I know exactly what it is. Now I know that if I'm not doing that, that means that I'm not following my routine, and then it shows exactly where I'm not following it, because I know exactly what I'm trying to do. If I visualize this shot, and say for this shot, I can visualize it like this, or I can visualize it like this. There's two different ways to do it, at least. You can come in from wherever you want. Like, say I want to be like this, and come in on it to see it. At the end of the day, what matters is, like, once I get to the position where I'm here, and I know that I'm perfect, and then I can just make my final stroke, that's what matters. And it's like, there's different adaptations that you have to make, and if you don't think about what your body's going to have to do, it's a lot harder. Say you're shooting this ball, but now you're elevated. Now you're looking at it, and you got to shoot over the top of it. But if you build into what your body is going to do now, when you're like this, you've already seen yourself being in that spot. So then when you're actually shooting the shot, you know that you're going to be closer. I wasn't necessarily doing it there. My point is that as you get better, you'll realize is that all this stuff that you do is all happening every single time, and that it's all totally your decisions about how you're doing it. So you just have to start from somewhere, which, like I said, I just look at the series of events. I'm like, boom, want the ball to be here. What's it going to look like? What's the stroke going to feel like? The actual forward stroke. Once I can feel the forward stroke, then to me, that's what locks in the whole thing. Because you use the forward stroke and then you see the ball going, that's all you really need. Then to me, that's enough, because you got to like realize that over time, the way you're cueing on and that is going to just be like, okay, for this shot, I need this spin, so that's going to make me need to hit this, area on the cue ball to make it, when I hit it, it's going to do the thing. And that's part of like the learning of the game. That's not the pre-shot routine, right? Being able to see that I'm going to make the shot, doesn't matter what the shot is, so to speak. It doesn't matter what the cueing is. None of that matters. It's more about when I know what I'm going to do, then now once I feel my body doing it, then I can get down and shoot the shot. Now if I haven't done that, and I'm down on the ball and I hit it, normally things don't go as well as when I do. So my goal is to do that. Now, sometimes shots are a little bit more complicated, or the situation, is a little bit more heated maybe, and, you lose focus, and then now you're not following your routine. That's the thing that shows you're not focused, is when you're not following your routine. That's what makes the routine such a powerful thing, is that it identifies immediately when you're on tilt, because if you're not on tilt, you will always follow your pre-shot routine perfectly if you have one, because that's the goal of the game, really, is to do it exactly the way you want to. And if you have a desire to follow a process and then you don't follow it, what are the reasons why you wouldn't follow the process that you want to follow? Mostly it's emotional. There's no, you wouldn't objectively make a decision to do a thing and then not do it unless you're emotionally in a place where you're decided not to do it because I emotionally made a decision to not do it. Objectively, it's the right thing to do as far as I know. So it's just an example of by having a pre-shot routine, an exact process to follow, when you deviate from that, you know that you're not in your best mind, because your best mind has already told you what to do. So all you have to do then to have your best mind is focus on the routine. Do the routine. That is the best thing you can do, is execute on the routine, and then have a system in place where it allows you to see where you could maybe improve on it. And most of the improvements that happen with these routines is actually making it less. If you have on the shot, you might get down, and then you're verifying the cueing to make sure. It's fine, you can do that. But I think that an improvement on that long term is that you just get down on the shot, knowing where you're going to do, and then you just do that exactly the way you wanted to. And then you hit the ball, and then you see what happens. It's different, and now you're learning from that. Oh, well, I was trying to get here, and now I'm here. What does that mean? It's just like a data analysis phase, where you have to be objective. I hit the ball too hard. There's more tangential velocity on the cue ball after contact, made it go over here instead of here. What's the correction that I should have made before I even hit it? How would I have need to hit it differently than this to make it do what I want it to do? And in this case, mostly it would have been I need to apply more draw and hit the cue ball softer, so that, or with less of a powerful stroke, to reduce the tangential velocity after the fact. I needed the same tangent line, roughly speaking, which means I need to apply more draw, but when I hit lower on the cue ball and then a softer stroke to create less tangential velocity after contact. And then that was the correction. And now by knowing that that's what I did wrong, so to speak, then if I have time, I can practice that stroke, knowing that that's all I had to do is just I just have to aim lower, so that when I'm down on the shot visualizing it, I'd actually be I visualized it where I was here, but I needed to visualize it here. And then that would have been and it used a little bit less power. So it would have been a different stroke. So the stroke that I used was not really the proper stroke. But the point is not so much to criticize yourself, because you're actually doing exactly what you wanted to do. The result is never going to be exactly what you were deciding to do. It's always going to be close if you did it right. It's never going to be exact. As you get better, you'll realize that perfect is a lot different than it was when you were first starting out. In fact, when you're first starting out, I don't even know if you think about what perfect would be. And as you get better, you start really thinking about what perfect would be. And then as you even get better than that, you realize that perfect is a lot more things than that. It's more about a generic sense. And because there's so much of pool is generic situations, that if you can see that it's just a regular repeated event, then there's really nothing special going on, and that lack of specialness means that we have a process that exists that can govern that situation. And our goal is to identify what we're already doing that makes everything easy and normal for us, through the way that we behave as normal people, in our normal life. What makes it easy for us to get through the day? And once you can identify in your own self, like, well, how do I go about doing things? It's like, well, some people, they don't like to plan as much. They'd rather just get out there, and then those people, then what you end up with in a pre-shot routine sense is that you're not going to necessarily be as detailed about the position. You're going to be more relying on your ability to pocket the ball from wherever it is and end up in a generic spot, and that's totally fine. Versus this person that might be more detailed, where it's like, well, I don't want to leave it up to chance, so I want to get exactly here, and I can do that. It doesn't mean that it's better, because it's like, what matters at the end of the day is like, am I enjoying my time here? Am I stressing myself out unnecessarily by like working so hard at like creating this process that doesn't need to be that detailed, in my opinion? And then understanding the quest is a little bit different. That's like the process that you go about living your life, is what you start with, and then you just say, well, what do I really want to do? Is that actually how I want to live my life? Because every shot you shoot in pool is basically your pool life, the way you go about doing it, that's just how it is. So if you want things to happen differently, you got to make changes. And as you get better at what you're doing, you can do it the same way but better, or you can find different ways to do things that might be better. And that's part of the quest. It's like, oh, do I need to double down on what I'm doing now, or do I need to make changes? And with the pre-shot routine, that's how you can do it, is that you like, once you like, this is what I think is my best process, you write it down, then you work on it for a while and you memorize it, and then you're like, oh, well, actually, instead of thinking about my feet, and as being a thing or whatever, I'm going to add these other things in, because there's not much going on with the pre-shot routine. Like, the way I do it, once I plan the shot and I see myself doing it, then I just shoot the shot. And then, so if I want to end up here, then there's a certain physics involved. I'm going to put a little bit of right English. Then once I feel the stroke, then I'm just going to get down. And now it doesn't matter how you get down. Like, you can step into it, you can stay here and lower yourself. You can come off from the side. What matters is that when you're actually about to hit the ball, you're in that spot. And how you get down is not part of the pre-shot routine. Necessarily, it's like your sequence that you do things will be the way that it's natural for you, and then if you want to evolve that, then you just like, okay, well, I want to focus on, my hand, my footwork, etc. So then in your pre-shot routine, you're just going to be like, today, instead of like worrying about all this other stuff, I'm just going to hit the ball, and I'm just going to focus on my hand and how it feels, and that's going to be the thing. It's the focus of the day. It falls in within the routine, but mostly your process is going to be the same. It's just, like I said, it's about identifying what you're already doing and then making changes as you like. So just get the feel of the shot, the ball, overrolled it a little bit, so then I know that, I was trying to get here, I end up here, pulled it too hard, and then I will just keep doing that. But in the process of seeing what I'm doing wrong, it's helping me evolve, because I know, oh, I hit that. But it's the visualization difference. When I visualize, then I can do the shot, and then the more visualization you add to your game, the less words there's going to be in your pre-shot routine, because the visualization is actually the purpose for the words is to help you visualize. You don't visualize to help you describe what you're doing. That's just so you communicate to other humans. When you're actually doing the shot itself, it should be all experiential information that you're not trying to describe. You're not trying to narrate to yourself what you're doing. You do that at the beginning because you are trying to understand how to be precise, and then over time, the words should drop away and the activity should just be the activity. And you can use words to describe what you're doing after the fact, and then you just set intentions with words to make changes, and then by like the way that you speak and the words you're using, right, can change how the thing happens for you. Just by like deciding, oh, I'm going to work on my grip. just saying that, I don't think that you have to say, I'm going to work on my grip and then get down on the shot and not be conscious of it, because that's your intention, So being aware of that and how you are talking about your pre-shot routine is very important. Do we have any comments?
No. Like 3 to 5 people.
Yeah. As far as like an exact process, it's hard for me to tell people what to do. As long as all the elements are there, it's fine. It should be very simple. Like you should have, over the course of the shot, or let's say if you're running a rack out, you should be able to have a routine that is, will get you all the way through that without having any questions about what to do. You should always have an answer for every situation. If you have an area where in your routine where you're thinking about what to do, what's the best shot, and giving yourself space to like have time to think if necessary, then that's in there. And then you have like, once I've decided what to do, we're gonna lock in our visualization. That's in the routine. We're gonna really feel what we're gonna do. And then once we are like satisfied that we're ready to shoot the shot, then we're going to go through the process of shooting the shot, which is a orchestrated motion. You once you've watched yourself play, then you should be like, okay, well, this is what it's going to look like when I get down on XYZ ball. It doesn't matter necessarily what the shot is. If I'm cue, if I can cue with my hand on the cloth, for instance, on like the cue here where my hand is here, so when I get down, it's like normal. So then it doesn't matter what the shot is. I can shoot any of these balls and it would look exactly the same, my body and the process that I go. And the only thing that would be different is the stroke that I would use would be like more powerful or less powerful depending on the shot. But the actual like routine that I use to get down in it is going to be mostly exactly the same. Some shots which are different, maybe like you're here, now you can't cue up the same, so you're going to shoot a shot. You might want to do a little bit of different adaptation, but then within, when the ball is here, this situation, you're going to do things the same way. Like if I'm trying to make that 4-ball and say I want to just come to the middle of the table because I can't really do much else control-wise, so I'm here, then if I really need to make it, the way that I kind of visualize it is being a little bit lower so that I can kind of match the balls up easier. So this is part of like understanding how you're going to get into the shot is like, well, I'm going to step in, get my cue, where I want it to be, so that when I'm down on the ball, then I can just hit it, And that was a weird one. Actually, I was like, dang, I shouldn't do this because I was a little bit left and I went right. That's part of like knowing you're doing that. For purposes of the video, I'm not really paying attention to that as much as I could. I'm more trying to describe the phases that you should be involved with and understanding that that's each situation. If you have a generic framework, but then when you get down to actually doing it, you'll realize that nothing is the same. What you're trying to do is take the sameness that's from every shot and then understand that's your routine, and then you're going to adapt each shot from the routine where I have this generic process, and once all those details have been covered, then I can shoot the shot and I'll be successful because I'm not missing anything. It just has to be a complete framework where you're giving yourself, okay, this is what I'm trying to do, then I'm going to execute on that, and then I'm going to collect data, and I'm going to realize, okay, this is the thing that I can do next time that will help me achieve a greater success when I start over at the beginning of the next cycle of this. Say it's the same shot, you're just shooting this shot, and this is just a drill where you're going to practice this 5-ball, so then when you hit it the first time, maybe I'm trying to play my cue ball over to there, so I know the speed of the shot. If I'm playing both balls, I hit it a little bit too hard. Like I knew it was kind of going to hit there, right? So we set it up again, and now I just set it softer. Because see, now I hit overcut it. So like the exact shot that I'm trying to shoot, is not so easy. It's like, hey, I can make the ball. Can I make it and end up in an exact space? But that's part of like, well, I need making corrections, and knowing that you're making corrections, you know, is, see, I'm almost getting there now. See, but that's part of like, by saying, oh, I did this, what I need to do next time when I shoot the same shot, that's all you're doing. That's in the routine. If you're not in that, if that's not in your routine, then what happens is you're filling that space with something else. Who knows what that's going to be? Mostly, I try to be very detail-oriented. My mind seems to work fast, so I like to fill it with activities that are beneficial, and this is one of them. Is like by constantly being aware of what's going on, what you're doing, and how you could be changing what you're doing to change what happens here, and how that's just an iterative process. It's a cycle that repeats, and that the more you see the cycles that are there and see how you're being successful when you're like winning and when you're playing well, you'll realize that that's a cycle on its own, and that now you're just trying to identify, you know, the virtuous cycle that you're into, and use more of that stuff, you know, and then remove all of the negativity and all the other things that happen when you're not doing what you want to do exactly. And that, you know, by filling the areas where you'd feel disappointment with, you know, with ways to grow through your process, then there's the disappointment doesn't hit you as hard, because you realize that that's in that moment where I'm feeling disappointment is actually the moment where if I wasn't disappointed, I'd see exactly what I need to do to be successful next time. And that because of that, the reason why I feel disappointment is because I'm not learning when I could be. It's not because I can't learn. The disappointment is knowing that I'm just rehashing the same thing that I could have changed. I could have made changes in that moment for next time, knowing that this is already done. It's too late to do it again. We only get one shot to do every shot. What we need to do is realize that if we're going to shoot another shot, then we need to have learned from every shot that we shoot, and that if we don't do that, then there is someone that is doing that, which is me, for instance, and that's one of the reasons why I get better over time, because it's not about making the ball now, it's about creating a process that allows you to get better, and then that process will then elevate your game. You don't elevate it, you just work on the process. If your process involves you being able to visualize, and then you practice your visualization, your visualizations will get better and more clear over time. And that's part of the pre-shot routine that I have. If you don't have that in there, where I'm like going to try to visualize as deeply as I can until I'm satisfied that I'm going to accomplish the shot before I shoot, how do you know when you're going to shoot? You just going to get down and hit the ball? I don't think that that's a good process. You know, it's not the best process, and you gotta, you know, by having a pre-shot routine, now you know when you're deviating from that, you know, you have work to do. You know, because if your pre-shot routine is so complicated that you can't accomplish it, you know, then you got to make changes to it. You know, or you know, you got to identify the areas that are really going to help you, which mostly is simple things. It's just identifying moments when you're defeating yourself where you could be helping yourself. You know, the pre-shot routine ideally is set up so that every moment you're helping yourself win, either through, you know, having more clarity of what you're about to do through deepening your visualization, or through your planning of the shot properly. If you need to do lines to help you, like, oh, that's the spot, this is the thing. If you don't have that built into your routine of being like, okay, well, when I don't quite see it, I'm not just going to hit it. I'm going to actually do a little bit of work to try to see it more clearly. If I don't know where I need to get next, like the exact spot, like, you know, how far over do I need to get? Instead of just being here and then thinking, oh, I'm going to just, you know, go this area and then shoot it down there, be like, well, where do I really need to get here? You know, and then find your spot. You know, and yeah, that's work. But it's all stuff that helps over time, because as you do it, you get better at it. So if it's in your process of like doing that little bit of extra to make sure that you're doing it the best way that you know how, and that you're developing that skill over time through challenging yourself to do it a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier, a little bit whatever, and that's, you know, in your value system of like, okay, well, what do I want my game to look like? You know, you got to evolve your pre-shot routine to be that way. You know, if you want it to be complicated in 36 steps, go for it. You know, that's what you want to do. You choose that. My own self, I think everything should be as simple as possible. So I'm trying to reduce things, which makes this video kind of a complicated video to speak about because it's difficult to really explain simplicity. You know, because it's like, well, all the hard stuff is just reps. You know, the more repetitions you do and the more ways you try to do something, it just makes it to where you're more capable of adapting, and then you don't need to explain necessarily, you know, those, you can't explain the repetitions that cause you to be able to do it like 6 different ways, and that now when you're faced with the shot, you're hitting it in way 3 of 6. Like, it's all about the time that you put into learning 6 ways to shoot every shot. You know, you can't, you know, when people ask, oh, why did you shoot this shot or why did you shoot that shot? A lot of that has to do with like, well, I've decided through the way that I want to play pool that I'm going to learn how to do different things. So I'm not going to prioritize making the ball necessarily or like winning. For instance, I'm going to prioritize learning, and that's in the process. It's like, well, I don't, you know, there's no like part of my pre-shot routine that has anything to do with winning. You know, it's strictly what I'm doing that matters, because I know that if I can plan and do the thing better, then I will win more. You know, so that's what I focus on with my routine. Now, if I get distracted, emotional, whatever it is, that takes me away from the routine. You know, I have a routine for when I'm sitting in the chair where I'm just trying to be peaceful and reflect on how much fun I'm having, because this is what we're here to do, is to enjoy ourselves. You know, and if I lose sight of that, then my goal is to regain sight of that. So I try to, you know, engage in like a meditative or relaxed attitude while I'm away from the table, not so much worrying about what's happening, because I know that when I get back to my turn, that I'll be able to engage in the activity of trying to make the balls go where I want. You know, and then, you know, if I do that better than you, if I play better than you, then I will win more often than you do. That doesn't mean that I'm going to win every time. You know, it's all about over time. If I work on my process and I get better at it, then I will accomplish it more often. And that's what I'm doing it for. It's not about winning. You know, winning is nice, you know. But if you really want to win, you kind of have to forget about winning and just realize that it's all about getting better. And, you know, winning is, a lot of it is situational, where if you know, what I like to say, you know, when people are like, well, I want to win more, how do I learn how to win? We're like, well, you just got to go find worse people to play against and you'll win more. That's the easiest way. The question is, do you want to be in a room with all those people or not? And it's easy for me to answer. I'd rather be around more high level people as I can. Not to say there's anything wrong with people that are not good at pool, you know, but if they've been not very good for a long time, you know, then I hope that they realize that they could just add, you know, a little bit of an element of learning to their game, and they could enjoy themselves and get better at pool rather than just enjoy the game as good as they are and not really commit to that little bit of extra discomfort that it costs you to do something that you're not used to every single shot. You know, you're just like constantly challenge yourself to go deeper in every shot. If you have a routine that says, I hit this ball slightly too full and the speed was a little bit too whatever, so in my next visualization, I know that all I have to do is just visualize doing it and realize that the stroke that I used was not quite the stroke. It should have been a different stroke. And that now when the next time I shoot it, I will still just try to shoot the same stroke that's the best stroke, knowing that just the information that I gather can help me revisualize a little bit better, you know. So I don't know if there's anything else I can talk about with this that makes any sense. So, what time is it?
10:40.
So I think we're going to call it. If I get any comments after the fact to detail it, you know, and the thing is, it's interesting is like, if you go on on the YouTube, I have you know,
Lucky
basically.
Loser Billiards says, good morning, Sean.
Who that?
Lucky Loser Billiards.
Oh, yeah, nice. Geez. I always forget your name. No, it's Todd, right? Yeah, Todd Shirley. Excuse me. I always forget for some reason, and I'm working on it, remembering your name immediately versus having to think about
Next
it.
time, call me to wake me up, thanks.
So, yeah, in a nutshell, you just have to, like, as long as you have a process that you use that you're conscious of, I feel like that's all you actually pretty much need to do to get better is just work on your process. I don't know that people necessarily ascribe to that we are just the sum of our habits, but ultimately it's like what you think isn't so important as what you do. Your intention to act on your thoughts is what's important. So that as long as you're like, I want to get better at pool, and that's one of my intentions, then hopefully I can just engage in that activity by just realizing that I just need to increase my likelihoods of success by using techniques that are a little bit more advanced than what I've been using, and a lot of that has to do with simplifying what we're doing through refinement of the motion. If we spend time swinging your arm so that the cue like moves straight without even using your bridge, then you'll realize that it's like just in that you can learn how to swing your cue, and then you can start hitting balls and making them without even using a bridge. I'll do this a little bit. Maybe I can make this shot. It's pretty thin. Yeah, but it's like if you can't do that without a bridge, it's fine. But if you can do it without a bridge, and then you think, oh, how much more stable am I with the bridge? Then you'll realize is like the fact that I can do that, because I practiced it one-handed play, because I know that if I can like stroke straight without my bridge, then when I have my bridge, it's going to be maybe worse actually. Who knows? But you get a little bit more control. But like I said, it's like the foundation of it is learn how to stroke straight. So it's like if you want to get better, it's just learning how to do mechanically a better technique through refinement of like, okay, what's actually going to generate the power that I want consistently, that I'm comfortable learning how to do, and it doesn't degrade my body, that's sustainable. And that's not part of the pre-shot routine. That's part of just like going out there and practicing. So you can't really talk about that. By focusing on your motion when you're shooting the shot, then you can engage in that activity as well. And that's another thing that's built into my game is like, well, if you're visualizing your body doing it when you shoot the shot, then you're actually refining your stroke every single shot. If I'm trying to get to this position here, and I'll actually like calm myself here and try to do this. So I'm visualizing, seeing the spin, ending up here. So a lot of it's like you might visualize the final position and then draw the lines that you need, and then you get a feel from the stroke from there. And a lot of this is experiential, so it's not like you can really say in words what's happening, because it's not the same. It kind of like builds on itself, but it's more like you're like everything is like flushing itself out, but you can only talk about this part of this whole thing at once. So that's what makes it tough about using words. Is like I can only use words to focus on one thing. The problem is that the actual huge picture is like infinite things happening that you could talk about. So you can only speak about one of them at one time. So basically, you connect with the shot as much as you can, what you're about to do, which to me is like, normally I like to stand in the same spot, roughly, so that I know that all I'm going to do is just get down, get my hand right, and then hit the ball. And that's part of what I'm doing here, is that when I'm here, then I'm like, okay, well now when I just bend over the way I want, get my cue here, now I can just pull back, hold, pause as long as I want to, and then hit the ball, right? And even though I paused for almost forever, it seemed like I only came up about this much farther than I wanted to on that shot. And that's because the pause doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is like, what does the stroke forward feel like? And if I perform that stroke and I'm not on the right line, it looks like it won't work
is all I can tell you, because I could, by standing there and visualizing me doing it, I know what it's supposed to look like. So then if I'm like down on the ball and it doesn't look like that, then I know it's not going to work. The thing is it's hard to tell people, like, okay, well, if you know it's not going to go, why are you shooting it? But it's like, partly you have to see what you're doing and demonstrate it to yourself so that you can make changes. So some of it is like, you just have to do the shot wrong so that you can figure out what you need to do to make it right. And a lot of it is like, well, if I'm down on the shot and it looks wrong, you can get up, you can shoot the shot, and you'll learn the information. The thing that is, I think, where people get a little bit weird about learning from that, and this is a little bit deviation from the pre-shot routine, but I think it's related, is that the point at which you went wrong was not where you're recognizing that you're wrong. It's that, you know, when you got down on the shot at some point, or that you were visualizing the shot, that you lost track of what you were doing, and then you ended up in a different place than you said you were going to be at, through like a lack of focus. And that now that you're refocusing, because it's actually important to focus, you're seeing that you're wrong. And the true like improvement is to have more focus through that period of time where you're losing focus. Not necessarily like anything that happens after that. It's just, we lost who we were for a moment, and then we ended up in this place, and now what do? Is kind of where we're at. But ultimately, we want to just not lose who we are. We just want to stay in that place. So it's like, for me, having a focus for every moment is what helps me, because then I know as soon as I start to deviate, the quicker I can see that there's a deviation from my visualization, the more I know that I'm good, which, you know, because then you can make changes, you know. Because every shot, like, if you don't see that you're deviating, then there's a learning moment, right? Anyways, I think that's going to be enough for today. Like I said, anybody that wants to comment on it, you can go to the YouTube. I know that there's 2 videos that talk about pre-shot routine and visualization, as far as like being in the chair. It's like mental management for shooting, which is the shooting system, and then there's also for when you're preparing to shoot, like when you're sitting in the chair or you're like playing in a tournament and you're waiting. And I think those are helpful. They definitely are like way more explanatory as far as the process. And I would say, in a nutshell, that's exactly what I'm doing on every shot that I do, and also while I'm sitting and not playing. So I take a look at that and study that a little bit. And those are all based off of more of a visualizer's thing, not so much feel and explanation of like what particular strokes are necessary. It's more about like creating ownership of what your activity is going to be, and then executing on that vision. So, see, what else are we doing? If you guys have made it to this point, we're in the next few weeks, we're going to have Evo Sports streaming here. So that's about to happen.
We opened up a membership waitlist.
Yeah, we opened up a membership waitlist for the pool hall, which we're going to open soon, which is like, obviously then we won't be in this garage so often. We've started, I shouldn't say we, Vic has been gracious enough to help me upload and edit the videos. They're going to the school group, so that is compiling an archive of all these videos and a little bit better editing, and we're going to use those videos as the basis for the educational stuff that we're going to do once the pool hall opens. So any other support that we get from that would be nice. We're going to open it for sponsorships for the Evo streaming, if anybody's interested in helping us out with that. We did have to throw a few bucks at that to make it happen, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're interested in doing it, so we're willing to get out there, and we'll be moving that over to the business once we open also. So it's going to be just a growing thing. So if you all are, you know, not subscribed to the channel, then it would be cool to subscribe, because in the next few weeks we're going to probably add more competitive streaming matches to the list of things we do at ESB otherwise. So, and there is a link to the school group pinned. All right, well, thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great one.